Greetings. I am Queen Diambi kabatuswila chiyomwata mukalenga mukajiwa nkashama wabakwaluntu wabaluba wakasai wa Congo. That is Queen Diambi kabatuswila chiyomwata. I am a woman king of the Order of the Leopard of the Bakwaluntu people who are part of the Luba ethnic group who are in the Kasai region of the Democratic Republic of Congo. I am also Grande Mai do Povo Banto Brasileiro, that is Queen of the African descendants of Brazil, and also Reina de los Congo de Panama, Queen of the Congo historical descendant of Panama. I am very, very honored and pleased to be here with you all today and address you thanks to your teacher, Andrea Graham, who I've met in Panama a few months ago. And we actually went together in Portobello, where I was crowned Queen of the Congo descendant of Panama. So I'm very honored to be able to address you for the occasion of the Business Expo and Market at the Sullivan High School in Chicago. And I am right now in Brussels. I just came back from Africa in Cape Verde, and we have met many local authorities as well as community leaders and also, of course, academic leaders. I am now actually the new godmother of the University of Cape Verde. So many people may ask, why is it that I'm all over the world when I'm actually coming from the Congo? And it's quite easy for me to explain is that the Congo experience expand beyond the borders of Congo. And Congo being the heart of Africa is really a huge center that involves many different ethnic groups and many tribes. And then when we know the history of Africa and we know about what has happened, especially during the Eastern human trafficking period from the Arabs, and then later the human trafficking period that happened with the Western world, mainly Europe, we understand that the population of Congo was also victim in great numbers of the slave, trafficking or the human trafficking that happened. So many of the Congolese descendants are actually all over the world. So that's already one thing that gives me many incentive in going to meet with people who are from African descent all over the world and to see what's going on, to acknowledge their experience, to learn from their journey, and also learn about all the resilience they have demonstrated in order for us to be here today. Then there is another issue that you oftentimes leads me to go all over the world, is that the problems that we see in Africa today are indeed caused mainly by some decisions that are taken out of Africa. And so we have to be aware of the power that many people outside of Africa have, not only because of the political will that they have to go and have Africa still very much a vassal of Europe and America and many other powers, but also because mainly of economic endeavors that many nations in the world have in Africa, because they are so many resources that are so needed in the development of technologies and different commerce all over the world. So when we know the solution cannot only be found in a local place, then we have to go around the world to find allies and to make sure that people who are involved understand, what's going on and what is the impact, and especially the negative impact of their decisions and actions, onto populations that really don't get to benefit much from those endeavors. So being a spokesperson for justice and equality and equity in the way we distribute and use the resources of Congo is quite important for me. And then also I love to speak about, advocate for, the protection and preservation of the environment and the Congo has multiple, ecosystems that are quite pristine and beautiful and deserve to be cared for and protected, like the Congo River, and with all the different rivers in the Congo Basin that are very important. Also, the Congo Forest, that is the second largest forest system, tropical forest system in the world, after the system of the Amazon and Central America, or South America. So it's important for me to advocate for people to have best practices in the way we care for nature, in the way we understand nature, in the way we protect nature. So that is a role that I take it to heart, because I go all over the world and meet with people who have same interests, and also people who are willing to commit some resources in terms of intellectual abilities and knowledge, and also knowledge of practices, and also funding. So that is one of the other reason why I go all over the world. So the main reason I mentioned earlier was to speak about the African experience all over the world and understand it, and also explain to others so they can have a better understanding about what Africa is like, and what are the needs, and what are the immense resources. Talk about the culture we have inherited for our forefathers and mothers. Talk about the abundance in heritage in terms of intelligent practices, governance practices, economy, and education in all matters, like sciences, mathematics, and medicine, architecture, urbanism, agriculture, a lot of things that we have accumulated over thousands and thousands of years, during which we build absolutely amazing civilizations that are oftentimes not very well known to the world. And I believe that there is a work to be done to talk about all that information and to vulgarize it, because scientists and historians and anthropologists, archaeologists have done a lot of work already in recovering most of the African experience and history. However, there is so much more to still be discovered, but there is also a lot that we can already start talking about to restore the balance in terms of human experience on the planet. So for me, it's quite important to go all over the world and speak on that, and speak about Africa, speak about the greatness of the continent and her people all over the world, to recognize all the African descendants, and to recognize their experience and what they've learned from the experience, and how they grew stronger and more resilient, and how they were able to overcome so many challenges, and despite the circumstances of great brutality and abuse, that they didn't lose their humanity, but to the contrary, they excelled in so many domains, including domains of many technical inventions that a lot of the children of African descent of the Americas have contributed to some oftentimes to make hard work easier. So they didn't fail to use their genius that they have always had, from the beginning of time, living for thousands of years on the continent and applying that wisdom and intelligence on the continent. But also they brought all that with them when they came to the Americas and Caribbeans. So oftentimes many people are deprived of that knowledge about Africa and her people. Many people feel like there is a void and there is nothing there, and that Africa was a land of desolation where people were very backwards and very ignorant, and that they were not even close to being human. They were kind of like in between. So a lot of the propaganda that has been put out there in the world have always portrayed Africans like not very advanced civilization. And when they talk about Kemet, that the Greek only called Egypt about 300,000 years before this current era, 300 years, before the current era, that was called Kemet for thousands of years before that, and still is, because most African descendants now have chosen to rename that country as being Kemet. And they oftentimes speak about that country as being outside of Africa, and even invented a region that is called the Middle East, where now they pluck out the country of Egypt and then put it in the Middle East, just based on the recent history of, the Arab population now living in that country. But it's quite interesting because it's one of the best example of African excellence, because the Kemetic civilization was an African Negroid civilization that originated from Central Africa in the region of Sudan. The population that came then further, to develop all along the Nile, several, civilization, not only the Kemetic civilization or Egyptian civilization, but many more before that, including one of the most known is the Meroe civilization of Sudan. But that's just one example. Before Meroe, before Kemet, there were other civilizations all over the continent. And after that, they were also excellent and amazing civilization way after Kemet fell, to prey to invaders that came from the east, mainly the north and the east, and Europe as well. So speaking on recognizing our heritage, recognizing who we truly are, is quite important, because you cannot possibly build a framework for a restoration of balance in terms of the way African people are treated all over the world if you do not claim or reclaim your heritage, and if you do not build a better framework of reference, so that we use elements and values of our culture to use as reference in order to decide what we want to do for ourselves, to advance our ability to thrive in the world. And also, I really am a great advocate of Pan-Africanism, meaning that I feel like Africans, despite the fact that they may be quite different, depending on where they are on the continent and outside the continent. Africa is a very diverse continent, and people are not the same from the east to the west, to the north, to the south, to the center. We have many, different people looking different, speaking different languages, having, diverse expression of their culture. Although we know that the baseline of the culture of Africa are mainly the same, and we have really a common denominator in what we consider values and principles upon which we want to build civilization, meaning the way we want to relate to each other and to self and to nature. So those are fundamental elements that are building block of a structure on how we can do better for ourselves. So for me, talking about history, understanding where we come from, understanding what we've gone through, sharing with each other the experiences that have been a driving force into forging our character and forging our different expressions today in the world, and that are also continuing to present extremely difficult challenges for us in terms of access to resources for health, education, housing, security, justice, and economic opportunities and financial opportunities as well. All of these things are baseline in many of the African countries, as well as in countries that harbor African descendants. And so because the problem is across the board, I also trust that the solution will be found by people from various backgrounds with various experience, but that are still faced with the same difficulties. So being a queen of Africa, being a traditional queen, meaning my kingdom is really inside a country, like many other tribes in Africa are inside countries that were, built or drawn on the map by Europeans. In 1885, Europeans had the Berlin Conference, where they decided to give Africa the face that it has today. But within that face, in the countries that we know today, we have to remember that before that, for thousands of years and definitely centuries, there were kingdoms there on the continent, and kingdoms that were very well functioning and very well, organized, and where there were so many, very advanced principle on how the country was organized, and how the people are related to each other, and how the economy was structured, and how the political power was really at the service of the people for the betterment and for the organizing of the community, so that the community can thrive. Also, one thing for sure, Africa was a land of least conflict. Not that there was no conflict, but the conflict were most likely not resolved with violence or extreme violence. There were, of course, sometimes armed conflict, but that was not the, first and foremost process on how to resolve conflicts. Furthermore, the fact that there's so many tribes today in Africa and so many diversity shows one thing: people moved a lot across the continent. So that diminishing the need for tension, because the resources were so abundant, there was no need to fight for territorial land. The land was extremely abundant and also fruitful and very rich. And also a lot of mixing happened, because that's why we have all these different tribes. A lot of marriage happened, a lot of mixing led to the great diversity we see today on the continent. Africa is definitely the continent with the most diversity. There's more diversity in the DNA of African people among African people than the DNA of the entire planet put together, compared to the one in Africa, which is only understandable because we've had 400,000 years of human experience on the continent, and we only started to lead the continent 70,000 years ago. So out of this experience, 80% of human experience only happened on the continent. So we had many opportunities to mix and then expand and be so diverse on the continent. So it's important that we reclaim that, that we speak on that. And being an African queen, for me, represent also a symbol of our resilience, because the African royalty, African governance structures were very much attacked and many destroyed. And me being here in front of you today, a queen on the continent and abroad, is for me a great achievement to show resilience of our structures and our values. So as an African queen, I am very eager to continue to learn about this African experience. And I'm very eager to encourage everyone to do so that you can lay a solid foundation to build who you want to become and who you want to be in life. I also believe that it's important to know who we are, because we need to elevate ourselves, because we've been victim of so much put downs and so much injustices. And it's important that we take the lead onto defining our identity and showcasing who we are to ourselves and then to the rest of the world, because I think that Africa is also immense value to add to global civilization, and to how we want to project ourselves into the future. A lot of the things we were doing back then have now proven to be the right way to do things, especially in terms of nature preservation and nature reverence. The way we dealt with nature was quite amazing and quite substantial to protect that asset, that amazing gift from creation. So I think the discourse is quite important to have when we're thinking about restructuring who we are. But my biggest joy here is to basically encourage all of you, especially the students of Andrea Graham, who's a very good friend of mine now, to encourage you to always seek to work on your identity, to structure your identity properly, to understand all your limitations, and to bounce them against the reality of who you truly are. And you can only do that if you know who you are. You can only know that if you understand, the legacy of your forefathers and mothers, if you understand that the journey, that the human journey that they've taken for thousands of years doesn't end because of human trafficking, doesn't end because of slavery, doesn't end because of oppression and Jim Crow and segregation and abuse of our human rights, doesn't end there. We have to constantly work in restoring a proper and sane identity, to have a decent self-esteem, so that we can also open up to the idea that we are limitless in what we can achieve. And challenges will always be in front of you, and that's okay, because we are here because other people overcame challenges, and so we are here to overcome those that are in front of us, so that the next generations can thrive as well. So I'm so happy that I was able to speak to you and address you for a bit of time. I would love to come and visit you in person one day. I wish you a wonderful, wonderful Business Expo. I assure you that a sound identity, a sound, way of looking at self is going to be always an asset in whatever enterprises that you decide to go into. Could it be academic, professional, entrepreneurial, anything that you want to undertake. You will always be most successful when you truly know who you are, and when you are proud to be who you are, and when you know where you come from. My motto, my motto of my crown is Kwetu Kakujimini. Kwetu Kakujimini means never forget where you come from. So this is quite important, and I am a manifestation of that exact say. Never forget where you come from. So I will never forget all that the ancestors have done for me to be here today, and for me to be able to address you and hopefully inspire you in some ways in knowing yourself better. Thank you.